Welcome back to the Fit Foodie Wellness Podcast, a conversation about life, where wellness is the thread running underneath it. I live wellness, and I am not here to teach it, but to talk about everything through that lens. Wow, can you guys believe that summer is almost here? I feel like it was just here. Memorial weekend coming up, and we're still in school till next week. We used to get out the Friday before Memorial Weekend, but they changed that calendar. We've got pretty big transitions happening in our house. We've got a middle schooler ending middle school and beginning high school next year or next fall, in the fall. This podcast really is about summer and walking that tightrope, because let's be honest, summer is like walking a tightrope, trying to find the balance between structure and freedom for the kids and fun and wellness for you and recovery and stress management, all of the above, right? And so it's like walking a tightrope. And whether you're a very structured human or not, I think summer still kind of takes control. And sometimes I think it's really helpful to not be as structured, to let the kids kind of free range it, so to speak. We've always done that. We live in a neighborhood where you basically can free range and come home when the lights are on. We've also kind of handled parenting like the lighthouse style, where we are on the top of the hill, shining the light, setting the boundaries. You're going to hear that word a lot in this podcast. Setting the boundaries and then allowing the person to roam those rocks under the lighthouse with the said boundaries and finding their own in a way. Walking a tightrope, that's summer. But what I wanted to talk about today was balance, and that comes when you set boundaries. And then off of balance comes recovery. And it's really interesting how this kind of came about. We had a conversation with our son last night, and I said no to something, but I didn't say no with a reason. I just blurted no. And in my head, I was like, quick, why are you saying no? Because you know the next question is going to be why. And I really didn't have a reason why. I just said no. And so then that conversation happened, and it was a heated one. So then, of course, that's when I'm like, okay, we're just going to take a step back. And then he went and rode a bike to calm down and collect himself. And I went and my husband and I had a conversation and kind of asked ourselves, like, why did we say no? And so the reason why we said no was because this particular situation that he wanted to have happen creates a lack of boundary. And I would go into detail on this story, but I'm also trying to protect him because he's 14 and I don't need to share like all the stories. Now, if you work out with me privately, you're going to hear the details. But on here, I'm going to kind of go around so that you understand really the whole point besides the deep story. So anyways, well, why we said no? Well, because we need to set boundaries. But why are we setting boundaries? Because we said no to something that has been happening too often, and we are the ones that allowed that to happen too often. And as a result, the pendulum swung a little heavy on one side, and we lost balance. And when we as humans lose balance in anything with social, with work, with food, with exercise, we don't recover well. And so when we don't recover well, we can't regulate our nervous system. And when we can't regulate our nervous system, we can't regulate our hormones. So obviously we had no idea in our head why we said no at the time. It wasn't like, well, because if we say no, then we're going to teach him boundaries, which is going to teach him balance, which is going to teach him recovery, which is going to regulate the nervous system, which is going to balance the hormones. That was not in our head. We just legitimately said no. And when he went on his bike ride, we had the opportunity to reflect on why it's important to bring the pendulum back to the middle, because summer is around the corner. And with summer, we lose structure. And it's really hard to maintain that structure. So we said no because we wanted to set this precedence of boundaries. And we wanted to not just set it with us, but teach him how to also set it within himself and his own little social network, his own little work/school network, his own little exercise network, his own little food network. So when we were able to come back together and sit at the table and discuss our powerful no, which when it came out of my mouth, there was zero power behind it. And after we reflected on it, there was so much power that it made me reflect on my own self. So the no became, here's why. We want you to be a successful human. And there are some habits that have been broken that we need to kind of pull back. So we're going to say no because it's going to teach you to say no. So the boundary is setting that up will help you find the balance in social, work, food, exercise. Now, was he engaged in this conversation? No. They're 14. Everything that blurted out of my mouth was like, all I heard was no. But we like to reason and explain the reasons, even though we didn't at the moment, why. And when we were able to sit down and kind of logically map it out and say, look, in order to be a successful human when you're older, you want to learn how to recover. In order to learn how to recover, you have to find the balance in everything, small doses of everything. In order to find the balance, you have to set the boundaries. And as your parents, it's our job to teach you that. And not just preach it, but actually act upon it ourselves. And so that, of course, is a very good reminder of, are we setting boundaries in our own social life, in our own work life, in our own exercise and food life? And if we're not, what can we do to set that boundary? Because once we're able to set the boundary, you have balance, and then you can recover. And when you can recover, blah, 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 your nervous system regulates, your hormones balance, and alas, you have accidental structure within yourself and also within the teachings in the home. So with us having summer right around the corner, it was a beautiful conversation, and it was met with understanding, and it was met with, like the typical fine, whatever. But we were able to kind of walk away and go, that felt good. And that is the energy I want to keep as we go into summer, and remind myself, not just as a parent, as a teacher to clients, but to myself, is what area of life can we stop and maybe unplug a few things from the outlet and kind of sit with that and reflect on what is keeping us feeling like everything is plugged in, save some of that space so that we can preserve that energy. Where are we overloading? Where is our cup runneth over? And is there a way that we can dial it back for ourselves? That way we can nurture that space and that energy. And I know this all sounds very Himalayan rock, salt, crystal, tarot reading, hippy dippy witchcraft, but It's an absolute science and it's true. By us sounding off to all of our devices, and I'm not talking about cell phone being just that's one device. Devices being too much social, too much work, too much food, too much exercise, whatever our devices might be, how do we pull it back and set a boundary between us and that? And when you're able to kind of reflect on that, that's the balance. That's the recovery. That's the nervous system regulating. That's the hormones. So, what was an interesting no, or I wouldn't even say interesting, what was just a flat out no with no meaning, became this wonderful reminder as we head into summer and have zero structure, or perhaps we start the summer off with structure and then we just completely give up. If we can unplug one thing, there's your boundary, there's your balance, there's your recovery, there is your accidental structure. A very small reminder. So, with summer, have a great time. Chill out. Who cares if, kids are running amok and you can't get it all right? It's okay. It can be messy. But ask yourself, where can I unplug a little bit? Where can they unplug a little bit? And then watch what happens. Have a great summer, guys. We will be back next week with something, probably a fun topic on, I did want to talk about stabilizers. And I have noticed something huge with my clients, which is like so powerful and so exciting. And not just with my clients, but with myself. When I really hone in on stabilizer training, it is a game changer. And I don't see it enough with trainers, and I don't see it enough in people's movement patterns. And once I was able to really focus on certain people with that, it was night and day in how they feel. So I'm going to go ahead and go down that rabbit hole next week. Stabilizers. In the meantime, happy summer!